this week's episode. All right. We're recording all that stuff. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's this week's episode of Downstage with Bryan and Hayden. Hayden, he just had a crazy afternoon, so this is why we're kind of like recording it in the middle of the day, which is now becoming close to the middle of the night because of daylight savings time. Daylight savings time having ended. So, Hayden, how's it going?
It's going good here. And how's it going over there with you?
Dark, moody, Gotham-like city that is New York. And
while you have your background behind you.
Well, I have my Knives Out background. On. Parents and everybody in the background just talking. One of the downsides is recording this in a very small bedroom. But yeah, this week was, first off, I want to address what happened with Astroworld. I don't know anybody who was there personally. I don't know anybody who was there I don't know anybody who was there personally, but I haven't seen the videos and pictures. It's just horrific to look at, and we're going to give a moment of silence to those who unfortunately passed away because of the chaos ensued. Yeah. All right, so yeah, just horrific just to hear about what happened there. And again, it just relates back. I mean, it reminds me of crazy concerts that you just hear about in the past, and the more stuff you hear about it now, it's just it is kind of haunting to hear and stuff like that too. And not haunting, but haunting and also horrifying to read and stuff like that too. So yeah. So picking up on the first story of this week actually relates back to the previous story that we actually talked about. We finally got a cat on everything.
Oh no, actually this is Scarlet. She's a very tiny little puppy.
Oh, nice. You got a puppy.
I don't know if you heard her making any background noises. So it's like I was unmuting myself because I'm like, she keeps making a lot of noises because she kind of wants attention.
Yeah, today has just been like, how do we do a podcast today without something going off or something in the background?
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, so the first story I want to talk about this week, it actually relates back to the previous story that we kind of ended off last week. Last week we were talking about how Ice Cube wasn't going to star in a Jack Black comedy movie called Oh Hell No. And he's going to be losing a $9 million payout because he doesn't want to take the COVID vaccine. Because of COVID, because of vaccination mandates, especially going into especially we're going into films now. And that goes straight into TV shows now too, whereas we found out over the past few days that Emilio Estevez was fired from the Mighty Ducks the Mighty Ducks show for not taking the vaccine mandate. Basically, he wasn't interested in taking he just wasn't interested in taking
the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, the COVID vaccine or something like that. And Disney was like, you know what? You're gone. You're fired. So yeah, that is just interesting to hear because when you think of Emilio Estevez, you think, oh, he's probably the the good brother compared to Charlie Sheen, and Charlie Sheen's crazy wise, craziness that is Charlie Sheen, and then you have Martin Sheen just trying to keep everybody together, sane, and all that stuff. But you would think Emilio Estevez would be the sane one and a more reasonable one, but yeah, apparently Emilio Estevez won't get his shot because he just doesn't want to just get one apparently. Although I'm trying to remember what the exact reason was. So, Hayden, what is your take on Emilio Estevez not getting his COVID mandated vaccine shot? Or
I think it's just for the same reasons why other people won't do it. Like, it's just ridiculous, people. All right, like, you get flu shots. We literally created vaccines to cure diseases. We cured freaking polio because of vaccines. Why, for some reason, people don't want to get a vaccine now? It just further ties back into so much like BS that's been getting spread around, and so many people just willingly to believe it. Because honestly, we as a society have just become so dumbed down that we just simply trust information sources that validate our own belief structure instead of just being objective. So it's like when people say, oh, well, a vaccine could be harmful. Literally dying from COVID is way more harmful than getting the COVID vaccine. It's like, oh, there's a microchip in it. Yeah, throw your phone in the ocean and see how long that survives for like an hour in the water. And if you're putting a microchip in your body, that's going to be going through your blood, which is a liquid. And how long do you think it's going to survive in there? Not long. And of course, like I said before, we carry our phones, we carry technology with us all the time anyway. So it's like we're already being tracked anyway. Literally every excuse they come up with to not get a vaccine is just, it's just, I don't know, thinly veiled BS essentially. And then the one that really I think is the weirdest one, religious exemption, like religious beliefs. Like,
okay,
I'm sorry, but like, are you doing that for every single thing? Are you going to let your kid get polio now because you don't want to get vaccines? Because if one vaccine goes against a religious mandate, then technically all vaccines should. And if that's the case, what is wrong with you?
Okay, so I was actually way wrong about him not getting the vaccination. So I'm reading from Deadline News, and I had it looked up to see what was going on with Emilio Estevez. And Emilio Estevez put out a statement on why he's not returning. So the actor says the exit was more of a result with nothing more of a good old-fashioned contract dispute, as well as myriad of creative differences. And apparently, he also revealed that he was stricken with COVID throughout the summer and fall of 2020, from what we known as the long haul syndrome. At first becoming symptomatic at the end of shooting the pilot of the Mighty Ducks Game Changers, despite taking precautions. So I was way off. Okay, the reason why, apparently, from what it may be because Disney is more or less requiring. Okay, here's more of it. He takes his on COVID vaccinations clear by stressing he is not anti-vax, but he's just anti-bully, and telling his franchise fans that I am just as disappointed as you are. Basically, the producers, ABC Signature, who produces the show, decided not to pick up Estevez's option for season 2 after weeks of back and forth with his team, and that Estevez, through his reps, declined to provide assurances that he would comply with the show's new policy of requiting COVID vaccinations for the crew and cast in Zone A. While he does not address whether his team assured the studio that the actor would comply with the new mandate, he affirmed that the creative differences were at heart of the contract dispute, which ultimately led to his exit. So what I'm hearing is basically one of the things that Estevez didn't want to do was get a COVID the mandated COVID shot, but also at the same time he had problems dealing with the creative people behind the show. So it definitely feels like
the wording of it though is a little confusing though, because it's like saying he's not anti-vax but anti-bully, but it essentially sounds like it just still sounds like it's coming back to not wanting to let people know if you're vaxxed or not, and it's like, why though?
Yeah,
like,
and
who does it hurt? It doesn't hurt you if you let the people you work with know. Because I think if anything, in this day and age, you can't simply just trust someone at their word, because their word doesn't mean anything these days. So it's like you actually have to have facts so that we can verify that, yes, you are not going to risk getting someone sick and probably dead.
Okay, so apparently it was kind of stressful to work there because, and this is his statement, as the show went back, because he's talking about how at March he got essentially he got a COVID, and that was right at the start of COVID and everything. So I suffered the summer and fall of 2020 from what we known as the long haul syndrome. As the show went back into production in August, so because of COVID and everything, everything was shut down, and then they went like all the shows kind of like went back on August. So
yeah,
I reluctantly shouldered on, but was uncertain about how I would be safe on set. I questioned the wisdom of returning to make a TV show in the middle of the pandemic and how actors were considered essential workers. He does have a point because there was a lot of shows that kind of like rushed right back into the swing of things without really that when all these shows were finishing around say February, March, April-ish because of whatever episodes they were able to film during that time.
Mm-hmm.
He does bring up a very good point, is like how safe will I be on set when there wasn't that many mandates originally, especially going into August, because on August there was a whole strict system of 6 feet apart, and we all remember that Tom Cruise thing that happened on the set of MI7, I believe, MI8.
Yeah, MI7, yeah.
Either MI7 or MI8, because I know they were filming it back to back or something to that effect.
Yeah.
That he basically lost his shit because these co-workers, these set members were just too close together, and he's he's not only the producer, not only the star, but he's also the producer and the head of his own production company. Mm-hmm. The show's producers tried their best to assure my fears to come back to work. You have a natural immunity. You'll be the safest one on set. I was repeatedly told. Additionally, I was warned by my former reps about possible consequences and legal jeopardy I could face for not reporting to work as ordered. So I returned to Vancouver. I followed the Canadian quarantine mandate as well as the strict Zone A on set COVID protocols. I did not complain, nor did I release my diagnosis to the public. I wanted to try and preserve the show's morale and be a leader. However, I was still suffering from long haul syndrome. The legacy of the franchise was more important than my own health. In retrospect, I chose wrong to protect the show over being transparent of having contracted COVID. I may have provided another public example to how we are all vulnerable to this disease. The quoted anomalous sources, producers, and showrunners all know the truth. Simply put, I am anti-bully. My exit to the show was a myriad of creative difficulties as well as narrative as any other narrative is false. To the fans of the franchise, I am disappointed as you are. To my Ducks cast and crew, have a wonderful season 2. Please know I miss you all. It was an honor. Yeah, from the sound of things, it does sound like it's weird because he's talking about how it does sound like he had like a natural abrasion or affliction to saying, I don't want to return to a show where it's like I was still suffering from effects of my of having COVID, and the show really did, and the producers really weren't allowing me to do much in terms of much in due to I did I'm doing a show and at the same time I'm also suffering through this I'm also suffering through the long haul syndrome, as he puts it, and he's still suffering from the side effects and everything. And
I mean, yeah, like even like after you've had COVID, like there's a possibility that you can essentially have what is called long COVID, where it's like even though the initial COVID is gone, you still could have a lot of remnant stuff that's just messed up your system inside, like your lungs, for example. Like for instance, like my mom got COVID a while back, and like when she coughs, she kind of feels a pain like in one of her lungs, essentially.
Yeah, and
so it's like, COVID can really leave a lot of long-lasting stuff, and it's like we're only going to end up finding out more about all these long-lasting like remnants and side effects of getting COVID like years later.
And I remember who was it? I think Bryan Cranston said he contracted COVID and he still hasn't. He may still not have regained the sense of a smell or something like that, or he had a long time before he regained the sense of a smell, something like that. Because, or I know that people who gotten COVID, especially, they still have like the side effects and everything like that. But from what I'm reading, it just sounds like he was more worried about his health and more worried about being worked, like not necessarily overworked, but just like worked to a point of it's.
It will also sound like he was worried about letting his fellow actors, coworkers, crew down, and letting the fans down as well. Because My Ducks is like I'm not that familiar with it, but it certainly has its popularity, and the fact that it did come back, like basically similar to how Cobra Kai is essentially just a comeback of Karate Kid.
Yeah.
It's like I can understand that, like, you want to make the fans happy, you want to be there for your crew and your fellow actors and so forth. But yeah, it's like at the end of the day, you do got to put your health first, because if you're not, you're putting yourself at risk, and you are putting others at risk. And also, and now hearing the full context, this story makes so much more sense now.
Yeah, although I'm just still trying to figure out why he's still not getting a COVID vaccination shot, even though he is stressing that he is not anti-vax, he's just anti-bully. So is he just not
it could be what they told. It could be what they told him, like, because from what you read in the story, it sounded like he was told he has natural immunity. Which that's a load of crap, because natural immunity can only last for like maybe a month or so if you're lucky. Like, no one's going to be naturally immune to COVID, because you can get it again. Like the flu, you're not just naturally immune to the flu, you can get it again at a later point in time. That's why we have vaccines.
Oh yeah. And
so it's like I feel like he might have been, I feel like he was probably misled because of that, because of what someone told him about the possibility of natural immunity. And that's probably why he might not be like getting a vaccine, or maybe he did get a vaccine, he doesn't want to disclose it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Because maybe he got so frustrated with Disney or whatever. I guess, I don't know. It is odd, to say the least.
Disney, for what it's worth, a lot of people have, I wouldn't say backhanded Disney, but Scarlett Johansson just this past summer was suing Disney over Black Widow sales and stuff like that too, because she didn't agree how it was released both on streaming and both on, both streaming and both in theaters, both as a theater option. So it's like, so yeah, reading what he said and reading, what he was going through, Emilio, if you are listening to this, I am so sorry for saying that you weren't a good brother. You are still a good brother. It's just I did not realize the state of what you were just talking about, because I did not know you were suffering with COVID and stuff like that too. So apologies, Emilio Estevez.
Hayden also apologizes as well for his statements, and yes. I now say that, and now my statements should just be seen as just a more general in terms of anti-vax related people.
Yes. But yeah, it is weird how there are actors, but it still goes into our previous story from last week, how there are going to be actors who are just going to be like, no, I'm not gonna work on this one because they're forcing a mandate on all this stuff. And first off, tough shit. I work in a we both work in an industry that is a industry, I'm not working, currently I'm not working as an actor. I want to work as an actor, but currently I still have the same fears that Emilio was just talking about. Even though someone who was just, what if one of the cast members was stricken with COVID, like maybe a month or two beforehand, I was like, oh, I was stricken with COVID, I have the shot already, I'm good. That still is, a thing. So, and what happens, I come home from set one day, not feeling so well, go to the doctor saying, oh, yeah, you have COVID. It's like, it just goes to show you, it's like how fast this thing really does work, even with all the precautions and all that stuff goes with. And yeah, it definitely feels like
in a Disney group of 20, all it takes is one person not being careful.
But yeah, and there are still probably like actors who will refuse to get a vaccination shot because they feel like, oh, my body, my choice. And first off, how dare you saying it, using a my body, my choice type of stance when that's like, that's for something else entirely.
Mm-hmm. Especially when the certain kind of people who tend to use this expression for not getting vaccine are the same people who don't let people have a choice over their body when it comes to abortions. So it's not their body, their choice then when it comes to that, even though that is something in their body.
Or they feel like it's not free for getting a vaccination shot. And again, as I said, tough shit, but we are living in an industry where we entertain people for a living, and how can we not entertain people for a living when there are, clowns, COVID idiots, who literally do not allow us to work properly? And this is the reason why I've been still pissed off about not being able to work in the entertainment industry for over the past year and a half, because one, I'm still like in the same mindset of I understand Emilio's plight, so I don't want to get sick and bring that sickness to my home, affecting my parents and stuff like that too, my brother, aunt, what have you. And then because even though I'm fully vaccinated, like you just said before, it all just takes one, like one person, and then again, theater space is a very small space. Even when you're, wearing a mask, it's still like one of those things. And
two points to that. Not only you have to worry about COVID, but all the variants that's brought about because of people not getting vaccinated for it, which is now allowing it to mutate and become worse. And also, the vaccine is free. It is literally the closest we will ever get to socialized healthcare in America. It's a free vaccine, for crying out loud, people.
And the one that created that free vaccine is also the one that, I mean, well, not the one that created that free vaccine, but the one who, you know. Oh, sorry. I heard screaming in the off in the distance that something was happening, but yeah, it's just kids running around.
Just classic New York.
Oh yeah, just classic New York. You know, I don't live in Manhattan, but Brooklyn.
Well, Brooklyn gets its fair share of crazy too.
Oh yeah, Brooklyn just gets its fair share of crazy. But yeah, Emilio, if you are listening to this, I do feel you. I do apologize for thinking that you just didn't want to take the vaccine or something like that because of either your own personal stance on the vaccine. But yeah, it definitely feels like he had his own personal reasons because of just producers saying that, oh yeah, he'll be fine during the thing, and he was still suffering through during production. So yeah, that and even when you're someone who is like perfectly healthy and all that stuff, but yeah, we live in an industry that thrives on entertaining people and when. But again, this does relate back to a previous story with the Ice Cube and how and for some reason, and again, Ice Cube doesn't want to take a thing, and he's got to lose a paycheck over it. So yeah, that's enough.
And also the intentions are very different too.
Yeah.
And yeah, Emilio, apologies again, man. And and hope you're feeling better, man. Would not wish COVID on anybody. It is just an awful thing to get. It's an awful thing to have to deal with.
But okay, that past 15 minutes was just like a little rush to get through, but it is what it is, and it does bring out a truthfulness of the fact that we are two actors. It's hard to do our acting when we're kind of like kept at bay because of personal things. It's much more harder for me because one.
Dramatic pause.
Yeah, dramatic pause as an actor. Because one, it's supremely hard to become an actor in New York because, again, I still don't. I have the same thing with the same reasons. Is that even though even though everyone is like feeling perfectly fine that one day, and then suddenly the next day, once someone could be sick, and then suddenly like, okay, we got to take all this vaccination things and all that stuff. So it definitely feels like, and it's the same thing with what's happening in baseball. Well, both basketball and football right now. It's like you have two well-known figures refusing to get the vaccine because they believe. Well, one, Kyle Irving is saying that that's just his personal choice. I can understand that, but Aaron Andrews saying he trusts science more than just getting the shot, or he trusts more than his own personal research. And just saying that both makes me cough and laugh at the same time. I mean, how can you, if you trust your own more personal research, right? I.e., actual, putting the scientific work over a vaccine that is based on scientific work. I honestly don't understand that.
Well, I mean, again, it's that whole thing of like people choosing information that only validates their preconceived notions, their beliefs, because that's easier for them to comprehend because they don't want their worldview to be challenged, because that's difficult for them. Because if their worldview is challenged, then a lot of the times that means they have to essentially reconcile with things that they were wrong about, or maybe how they could have been essentially bad people, and no one wants to see themselves as a bad person, obviously. So it's like you kind of just further dig yourself into this rabbit hole of misinformation because you're going to hope that eventually you're going to be right, because maybe something will, say you're right. And then all it takes is enough of that validation to get people to, believe that, hey, I'm right. Like, for instance, look at how many people went out to freaking wherever that was in like Texas or whatever, because they thought JFK Jr. was gonna magically show up. Oh no, he wasn't dead all along. He was just hiding in plain sight. It's like, no, no, the dude is like he is dead. I'm sorry, but he is, people. And it's like, no, he's not magically coming back from the grave. He hasn't been alive for 20 years. But honestly, because enough people believe conspiracy theories, and once someone believes a conspiracy theory, you can't bring them back to reality. Because they'll think the more someone tries to prove them wrong, it just further proves the conspiracy theory.
Yeah. All right. But I feel like our discussion for this has run its course. So we get into the next discussion. So Ray Fisher, who played Cyborg in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, Justice League, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, has come out swinging against DC again over this time over the cancellations of the New Gods. And the New Gods was going to be essentially the continuation of the story of Darkseid, his followers, Apocalypse, and New Genesis, which is essentially filled with people who used to be on, who I forgot what the story was about New Genesis. I think Darkseid and his people were on New Genesis before he moved into his own personal place as Apocalypse and stuff like that too. And so Ray Fisher came out saying that Anna Duvall, I think that's her name. She was originally going to direct the New Gods, and she has come out saying that the film was canceled because of creative differences because of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And Fisher came out swinging, saying that is essentially bullshit because he believes it was canceled because of, what was it?
Was it like DC just like essentially not knowing what they're doing? Or Warner Brothers really not knowing what they're doing?
Well, it was either that or... Hang on.
I'll just ramble on while you find it.
Okay, so his thing, his answer was that Walter Hamadal and Toby Emmerich trying to use Zack Snyder's Justice League as a scapegoat for canceling the New Gods is sad and cowardly. That was his tweet. That basically said that he's basically saying, but Duvernay, oh man, I'm about butchering her name. I'm sorry. She said, "I just like DC Comics. I love New Gods," which was the project that got axed. The studio decided that they did not want to pursue a certain part of that comic world based on some things that were going on in another film in that world. So I wouldn't.
My goodness.
That's gonna be cut. No. So basically, they didn't want to. Yeah. And Duver. That's again. If I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, I'm sorry, but it's just the way I see it sometimes. But she's basically saying that her project was canceled because it essentially didn't align with what was just which was just shown with Zack Snyder's Justice League, or it may be some other film that she's alluding to, but she's probably talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League because the only characters that came from the New Gods, like Darkseid, his followers, Apocalypse, all stemmed from Justice League. Yeah. And Zack Snyder's Justice League or Dawn of Justice. And a lot of it, I can understand, trying to do a New Gods movie and then suddenly having to take the backstory or everything else and just like, oh, here's this movie that just came out. You got use that in order to write the movie and stuff like that too. And then suddenly and then the studio decides to pass on because when the movie came out, they didn't like the vision, so it was like we just gotta scrap that idea and just go right into the thing. But it goes to show you that DC extended universe really does have a very like they're trying to do their own version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is understandable, but at the same time they're doing it in a very roundabout way, and they're focusing more about the funness of DC and all that stuff, and yeah, and I understand why Fisher came out saying that they're just using Zack Snyder's Justice League as a scapegoat just to cancel the film. That might be true, but also might be.
Also, they've been using that as a scapegoat for a while anyway, for like other stuff too.
Yeah, and wow, hang on, you talk while I need to.
Okay, well, yeah, I think it's just a little ridiculous to say it's Zack Snyder's fault because one, he did essentially introduce us to Darkseid, because when Joss Whedon took over, there was no Darkseid. It was just Steppenwolf and his weird relationship with the mother boxes that borderlined on incestuous. So at least with Zack Snyder's version, one, we actually do get to see every character have a moment, and we actually do get to be introduced to who the big bad of the future would be. And it's like, yeah, we see him in the flashback, and he's like, he's not as strong, but he's younger. Of course, he's not going to be as strong. But again, that's what introduces us to Darkseid, and I don't feel like we actually need a New Gods movie to see more of Darkseid. I feel like you could just use whatever next Justice League movie to show more of Darkseid.
Yeah,
so I feel like centering a whole movie just around Darkseid and Apocalypse and his followers, there's not. I honestly don't feel like you're going to be able to do that much with it on its own.
I think it also has to do with Marvel having just released Eternals as well, and Eternals is basically the same thing as Darkseid, essentially, but the New Gods.
Well, it's essentially Justice League, though, because that's how they were hyping it up as. It's like that's how it's been hyped up as. Like this is Eternals is Marvel's Justice League. Like that's what I've been seeing the hype around it when they were talking, like when they were when talk about this film has been, and that's what people who've seen the movie essentially kind of labeled it as.
Interesting. But yeah, I think it also has to do with the fact that New Gods has a rich lore and mythology behind every single character, because there's literally a guy called Mr. Miracle who could literally escape anything. And when he's on Earth, he poses as a magician because why not? He is if his superpower is essentially escaping anything, that's posed as a magician. And his wife, Big Bartha, Big Bertha, Big Bertha, I think, or Big Bartha, I think. No, Big Barber, or
Barber.
Is
okay. That person.
Yeah, she's like 9 feet tall, and they have a loving relationship. So, there is a woman called Granny Goodness who, despite the name, is not necessarily the grandmother you would think she would be, and she's running a den of assassins raised of orphans. It's a very hard mythology lore to actually get this right on screen. And then there's Darkseid, whose whole shtick is that he wants the anti-life equation, and accessing the anti-life equation would essentially bring the end of all life as we know it, or universe. And that's essentially the gist of it. But I think it has to do with the fact that, one, Darkseid would be too similar to Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
And thus, people were like, oh, this is just like, Infinity War, where Thanos has his own crew of people. Then you have, Eternals. Then you have the fact that Jack Kirby's work is so imaginative that it's hard to actually get the stuff actually on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like Apocalypse, when you read, Apocalypse is basically a planet of fire. Mm-hmm. And even though it's a planet, but it's a planet of fire, it's not like, it's not like the sun planet of fire. It's like it's a living planet that's like all industrial. Mm-hmm. So,
like the animated Justice League movies that they did for so many years, where when they do show Apocalypse, you get to see that very industrialized, like dark red planet.
Yeah. So how would you make that look on screen, especially in live action? Mm-hmm. And of course, the only thing that they showed in Zack Snyder's Justice League was the fact that it was in a palace of sort, that sort of thing. So I understand that why Ray Fisher said that the Warner Bros was just using Zack Snyder's Justice League to essentially like scapegoat into not working the thing, but the past few years, barring Justice League, we've had different adaptations or movies that were going to be part of the DCEU that was just canceled outright. There was Trench that was going to be about essentially those weird sea monsters in Aquaman that ended up being essentially a Black Manta movie. And who wouldn't want to see a movie with Yaya as Black Manta essentially dealing with Cthulhu-like figures in the deep sea?
Yeah.
I mean, this is going to be this would be essentially a deep sea horror movie. And, a deep sea horror movies are rarely rare because,
that doesn't tend to jive well with superhero content.
Yeah. And, then there was the Batman movie with Ben Affleck and
Deathstroke. Joe Manganiello, I think his name is.
Yeah, Joe Manganiello. And he had his own movie, his own Deathstroke movie, which was going to be essentially about him in the League of Shadows, training with Ra's al Ghul and Talia and stuff like that too. And first off, as much as I love them using Ra's al Ghul and stuff like that, having and this is my gripe, having a main character or some character being, especially if they are in the DC universe, suddenly being, an assassin and whatnot, and they suddenly are part of the League of Shadows or the League of Assassins. And then, it is a little played out because I know Batman Begins did it, but that's
also they did that in an animated. They also did that in an animated Batman movie, where they introduced Damian Wayne. Yeah. Their animated Batman stuff, and essentially Deathstroke was a part of the League of Assassins then in that movie. And he was just essentially coming back for, I guess, revenge or power or whatever it was. It was an odd movie. And it was odd to have Deathstroke be the kind of villain the way he was styled in that one.
Yeah, but I love the idea. But Deathstroke is a character that is basically like the anti-Wade, Wade Wilson, because he is basically they kind of have a running joke that Deadpool was based off of Deathstroke, and because last name is Wilson and stuff like that too. But being essentially a super soldier for the army, and then finally and then suddenly using that super soldier serum and whatnot, becoming essentially a super assassin for hire. But that's a great story all by itself. But
yeah,
I understand. But for some
especially
reason,
with how tragic his backstory is too.
Oh yeah, he loses his son. Like he loses his son, he loses his daughter. His wife divorces him. Not only that, his wife also shoots out his eye, or either shoots out his eye or stabs his eye out. I forgot which one. It's usually.
I think it was shooting. I think it was shooting the eye out.
And that by itself is like a very hard, and that could be a hard R movie, especially if you like it to like the Rambo movies or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the closest one I enjoyed that really does the Deathstroke story well is a DC anime movie called Deathstroke Knights and Demons that actually deals with not only Deathstroke as a character, but also how he got his powers, what he does as a mercenary, his family, or as Vin Diesel will say, family, and dealing with people who want to actively kill him, but also, who actively want to kill him, but also want to use his family as a means to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing. And then we gotta talk. And then there's the David Ayer stuff where he just posts like random stuff of the Joker. They're like, oh man, you imagine what type of movie you would see, but too bad you can't watch it because they took it away. Mm-hmm. Okay, first off, David, I know if you all listen to this, David.
Because we know you listen to us, David. We know you watch us.
Yes, you watch anything that has, if they're talking about the Joker, about Suicide Squad and Joker, you're probably listening. But David, if you all listening, I know you are a good director. I've seen your work on Fury. I've seen Harsh Times. I know, Training Day and stuff like that too. But you did not write and direct a good movie for DC. It was butchered even in your writing. But I understand the pain or frustration you have of not showing that true movie. But casting Jared Leto as the Joker was a horrible choice overall. Mm-hmm. And I really do not, and this is a straight fact, I really do not want to see the same mannerisms of Jared Leto's Joker in my face again. Mm-hmm. And then there's this little tease of showing Joker's face up, close up face, and we find out that, oh yeah, apparently his eyebrows have been shaved off, but in the process, there's like little ha tattoos around the eyeball. Eyebrows. It's just stressful to try and handle Jared Leto's Joker. Also, and this goes to show you how well Joker is as a character. Jack Nicholson and Cesar Romero's Joker, amazing. Because he's a prankster. He loves pranking crime and stuff like that too. But he's still evil, or still a bad guy. Jack Nicholson's Joker, evil incarnate, but still has a wicked sense of humor. Mark Hamill, same thing. Heath Ledger, managing to do.
I'd say he's even more evil because his character serves as a reflection of the darkness within whoever he talks to.
Yeah, and more so with Harvey Dent and Batman too, and
exactly.
And then you have
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, Arthur Fleck, and he's just a reflection of the fact that it's not the.
He's a reflection more of our society, if anything.
Yeah, and then you have Jared Leto's Joker, and he's just like. What is he a reflection of? Is he a reflection of crime? Is he a reflection of what's happening to a person's psyche? There is no purpose of that character outside of he is Joker. That's all.
No, honestly, the only purpose I can see for his character is that Jared Leto's version of Joker is just a guy who found a gimmick and he stuck with it. That honestly, genuinely really seems like that's all it is. Like he found a gimmick and he committed so hard to it.
Yeah.
That's honestly you can also say that about how he went about it in real life anyway. Because he went so hard with this weird gimmick that he just did a lot of weird stuff involving sending weird gifts to his coworkers that I'm not going to mention because that's just uncomfortable. Yeah. And also, by the way, David, Jared Leto hasn't done anything good since Requiem for a Dream. And I apologize for that yapping dog in the background, but seriously, Requiem for a Dream, that was the last good thing he honestly did. He's average or not as good, genuinely.
Well, technically speaking, the last thing he did was, I will say the Requiem for a Dream, one of his last movies that was pretty okay. Yeah, when you think about it, it was Requiem for a Dream, but off and on, Jared Leto works when he's in a more supporting role or in a more supporting role, or if he is in a independent movie. If he's in both a supporting role and starring in an independent movie, he's more better suited. Mm-hmm. But when he's in a more Hollywood movie, I mean,
well, even with the way he's used in Suicide Squad, you can make that same case. His Joker is a more supportive role because he's not the main. But he's still. But that's the thing. It's like, and there's the thing you have to ask yourself: would the roles be any better with someone else? Would you, like, for instance, take Blade Runner 2049, and let's say you replace Jared Leto with somebody else to play the character he played in that, and would you notice? And would there be a noticeable difference? Well, yeah, there very likely would be, because that's the thing. It's like it probably would be a more better character, possibly. And that's the thing you have to keep in mind. It's like, would the actor themselves, like, if you replace them, then would it, Sorry, I'm just gonna shut it. My train of thought just derailed.
No, I hear you. It's like, and you bring up a good point. Nathaniel Wallace, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but Wallace, he's a small role. He's literally on screen for like maybe 10 minutes, like 10 minutes or so, and you could literally have someone like Gary Oldman play the role, and it wouldn't be the same exact thing. It was like, okay, first off, you get Gary Oldman to play a role, you get Gary Oldman gravitas to the role, or if you wanted to do a reflection of the character, then you have Ryan Gosling play the character in old makeup, because or something like that.
Yeah.
And the thing
or even just get an older gentleman who kind of looks like he could be an older version of Ryan Gosling already anyway, then have him play the role, and then boom.
And especially with the story with Kay and Wallace and everything else about that movie, you would think that, this guy is probably going to be like the father figure and stuff like that too, especially since Roy Batty and Tyrell was essentially the father figure. I mean, the son, the prodigal son, the Frankenstein's creature to Tyrell's, doctor, and then, father and son and all that stuff. And then when you meet Wallace in the movie, it's like he's just this guy who's blind. He doesn't have that much of a backstory. If you had it more of an older gentleman and stuff like that too, that builds up a more mystique too. It's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this guy is the father to Kay.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they don't do that. Again, as much as I love that movie, there are some missed opportunities about that movie. But the thing about the Joker in Suicide Squad is that they hype him up more as being the true villain to the movie, as opposed to Carla Delevingne's Enchantress.
Mm-hmm.
And as much, and I do agree that the Joker should have been the main bad guy. Mm-hmm. But again, maybe cast someone who has more of a gravitas playing a warped character like the Joker, as opposed to someone who is just going to be invested in playing a weird character.
Exactly.
Because you need, in order to play the Joker, you need to have someone who has the same mindset, or at least the same prowess in terms of, hey, this is the Joker. How do I take care of a character like the Joker? Do I think like the Joker? Am I an abusive person to be around with? Am I that evil to be around? Just think about all your choices. But then you have you have these method types that oh man, okay, I'm being the Joker. How do I think like the Joker? How do I maybe I should just send a dead rat to whatever. And then it's like, be more extreme. And I think that's the problem, is that people who play the Joker, or the people who see the Joker, is an extreme version of what they think the Joker is.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a problem. And the Joker in Suicide Squad is an extreme take on what the character should be.
Mm-hmm.
The character is called the Crown Prince of Crime for a reason. He puts the laughter and slaughter for a reason. And then when you see him in the movie, he's just like moping around. I miss my Harley, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like he's moping around. He's not doing anything that is hilarious. He's doing he's basically cringing throughout the entire movie. And it is just
he's basically like some teenager who had his heart broken and he can't move on.
Exactly. And to put this in perspective, Harley Quinn's cartoon does a better take on Joker leaving Harley than Suicide Squad does in that whole thing. Mm-hmm. Yes, you know, they have an episode where the Joker, spoiler alert, the Joker in season 1 loses his memory, so he pops back up in season 2, sans memory. He has no memory, and he meets Harley Quinn again, and he does not know who she is, so he's acting like a chum and all that stuff. And then when he gets his memory back, it's like all this stuff just like clicks in his mind is like, oh, he admits his mistakes, and suddenly is like, oh, there's an actual change in the Joker. You know, they do it more better in that compared to in Suicide Squad, where he does feel like he's just an emo kid. I mean, an emo teenager just listening to, you know, all of his music and stuff like that too. And, you know, his friends are like, you know, what are we gonna do today, boss, and stuff like that too. So it definitely feels like, you know, what the hell.
And also, if you want to see a better version of Suicide Squad where Joker is basically becomes the villain, watch the animated film Suicide Squad Assault on Arkham, I believe it was called.
Yeah, it is.
Where it just starts off as just them going on a mission for Waller, and then Joker basically starts taking over as sort of the, you know, villain of the piece.
All right. And before we wrap up today, and I feel like we talked about, you know, a lot. So I wanted to give you all a little hope to something in the future. Tyler Perry recently shared that he is producing and writing, but not directing, Sister Act 3. And he calls it, we all need that feel-good moment in the movies again, where, oh my God, I left there singing. There's my hope. So, yeah, I love the idea that they're doing Sister Act 3. We all need that like feel-good movie where it does feel like, oh, you know, when you watch it, you actually are legitimately excited to watch a movie. And Sister Act has always been that type of movie that when you watch as a kid or watch as an adult now, it's like you was like, yeah, I'm not gonna dance, and then suddenly it's like you just stop bopping along to the music, and it's just like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna start singing and dancing to the songs. So yeah, he says it's the movie that we need now. And I agree, you know, that there is that we do need, like, the past few years have been very dreary, dreary in terms of like entertainment. It's like, yes,
I mean, just dreary in general too.
Yeah. And just dreary in general is like, even in the mainstream Marvel DC movie, well, even in the Marvel movies, it's been a little more less. It's like there is fun, but it's like a great example of this is Spider-Man Far From Home. No, Far From Home. The one where he goes for a vacation in Europe. Mm-hmm. It's like he deals with one of the most Mysterio, and Mysterio in that movie is like the most demented version of the character I've ever seen. And he's literally trying to like break this kid's spirit, mind, body, whatever you. And then you watch something like, you know, say Ant-Man 2, and it's like, that's still a fun movie. Or if you watch something like Shang-Chi, that's still a fun movie, but there's still there's a darkness in these movies, especially coming into 2020, why am I saying 2012? 2022, where it's just I am kind of sick and tired of all these, dark and gritty movies. Halloween Kills, which I still enjoy and love. It's like one of the darkest Halloween movies there is, and that's kind of hard to do because the bar is not set that high for Halloween, especially in terms of the series. The same with Friday, same with Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, what have you. But yeah, there hasn't been a real feel-good movie that hasn't been released, say, up to at least a few years ago. The last time I remember being a feel-good movie that was released and people really excited to watch was maybe Mary Poppins Returns, but that's Mary Poppins.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm excited the fact that Tyler Perry, even though Tyler Perry is writing and producing, and Tyler Perry has a hit and miss track record in terms of his movies, but when he puts his mind to it, he does make a lot of great, what I call great feel-good moments. Even if in those feel-good moments in those movies are heartbreaking in between those other, it's in between those feel-good moments, there's heartbreaking shit in that movie. But when he does do the feel-good moments, it's at least, it's feel good. It's I don't have to worry about him breaking my heart in 5 more minutes. But yeah, Hayden, do you have any thoughts of Sister Act 3 being the feel-good movie that we all need?
Well, first off, one, I haven't seen any of the other Sister Act movies, and again, with Tyler Perry's track record, it is very much something where it's maybe it'll be a hit, maybe it'll be a miss. It's hard to tell. It's just a coin toss, and I have no opinions on it. I don't know, honestly, because there aren't a lot of movies I honestly am hyped up enough to go and see in the theater. Really only 2 that come to mind that I'm actually gonna go and see. Spider-Man No Way Home, and then The Batman in 2022. Those are generally the only movies that actually motivate me to want to go sit in a theater and pay admission to see this thing.
And speaking of No Way Home, there was some spoiler images that that may be either true or it may be Photoshop, or that's the thing about Marvel currently. They keep everything so mysterious.
Honestly, I kind of want to say a little bit of something to that, because it's there was a video I saw from this channel called Corridor Crew, and they were essentially doing a VFX artist react special kind of thing where they were debunking the claim that some of the video we saw of Andrew Garfield was essentially Photoshop or deepfaked, because it is not actually easy to do it. And honestly, first off, if you want to actually learn more about how deepfaking works, go check out Corridor Crew. They have a whole video dedicated to it. It will probably, by the end of it, you will essentially be spoiled to it because, one, we've already seen the video anyway, but they essentially do confirm that, no, it's not deepfaked. Because to actually do it, it takes so much work. And honestly, for someone to be able to do it like this, there's no way it's deepfaked. And yeah, just go check out that video, Corridor Crew, about the Spider-Man leaks. It came out I want to say a month or 2 ago.
Well, yeah. As of right now, there needs to be at least some feel-good movies coming in the next, say, a couple of years, because if this Track 3 happens to be one of them, then please, by all means, Tyler Perry, make that movie for us, because I'm just kind of sick and tired of seeing very dreary, gritty type of gloomy movies. Movies should be fun, and I think movies need to be fun again. And on that note, I think that's a good way to end the movie. And then, what, you ready to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm okay with Jury as long as you actually do the story right and don't just make it dark for the sake of dark. That's the thing. As long as you're making a dark movie and actually has a story purpose, great. If you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, don't waste our time then.
Yes. And on that note, I think that's a great way to end the episode. This has been Downstage with Bryan Hayden. I'm, of course, Bryan M. Davis. That has been Hayden Lumus. I have no idea how to end these episodes, but yeah, that's my sign off. Hayden, what's your sign off?
Hip hip the doodly do.
And take care, everybody.